That winter, I made the questionable decision to cover the holiday shifts at Frank's gas station. It was one of those no-frills places off Route 49, more a concrete box than a convenience store, surrounded by miles of dark, empty highway. Christmas Eve. A blizzard was on its way, the kind the weather forecasters get excited about. By 9 o'clock, the snow was still falling in lazy, fat flakes, but the traffic had already died completely. It was just me, the hum of the coolers, and the endless white drifting past the windows. I was mopping near the coffee station, trying to stay busy, when a pair of headlights cut a sudden, sharp path across the front glass. They belonged to an old, dull grey sedan. It was boxy, a model I couldn't place, something that felt like it had rolled straight out of another decade. It pulled into the otherwise empty lot with an unsettling slowness, parking far from the entrance. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. He wasn't dressed for the cold at all. He had a heavy dark coat on, but no gloves, no hat. His hands, even from that distance, looked raw and red against the falling snow. He moved fast, practically jogging to the door, ducking inside as if he was fleeing something out there in the dark. He didn't look at me. He went straight past the counter, his eyes fixed on the back of the store, and stopped in front of the coolers, specifically the soda section, and he just stood there. His back was to me, a rigid, dark shape against the bright fluorescent lights of the drink fridge. I waited a beat, then gave my standard line. Evening, find everything all right? Nothing, not a twitch, not a turn of his head. He just kept staring into the glass, at the rows of colorful cans and bottles. There was something about his stillness that was deeply unnerving. It felt too practiced, too deliberate. It wasn't the hesitation of someone deciding what to buy, it was the stillness of a predator. After what felt like a full minute, I walked back behind the safety of the counter. The moment I was behind it, he suddenly turned. He moved with that same abrupt quickness, his eyes locking onto me. Empty-handed, he walked directly toward the counter. He stopped just a few feet away, close enough for me to see the skin around his knuckles. It was chapped, cracked, and an angry, painful-looking red. "How long do you stay open?" His voice was completely flat, without any hint of tone or emotion. It was like a voice recording. 11, I replied, my own voice sounding a little too loud in the quiet store. He didn't react, he just held my gaze. "You're here alone?" And like an idiot, I said, "Yeah." It was a reflex, the kind of absent-minded answer you give 100 times a shift. But the word hung in the air and I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. The instant I said it, I saw his mouth twitch. It wasn't a smile. It was a tiny, cold muscle spasm at the corner of his lips, and it was the most menacing expression I had ever seen. "Brave," he said, the word coming out just as flat as the others. "Most people aren't this far out." And with that, he turned, walked back to the door and left. He didn't buy anything, he didn't even glance back. I watched his grey sedan pull out of the lot and disappear into the swirling snow. The second he was gone, I rushed to the front door and threw the deadbolt. Then I double-checked it. My heart was hammering against my ribs. The whole encounter took less than 2 minutes, but it had completely shattered the quiet peace of the night. By 10:15, the blizzard had arrived in full force. The lazy flakes were gone, replaced by a horizontal barrage of wind and snow that battered the windows. Visibility was 0. I decided right then to close up early. No one else was coming out in this. I was in the middle of counting the cash drawer, my back to the front of the store, when I heard it. A faint sound. A dull, repetitive tapping. It was coming from the back, from the direction of the stockroom. We had a heavy metal fire door back there, one that led directly outside, but it was always chained and padlocked from the inside. I put the cash down and walked toward the stockroom, my steps feeling loud on the tiled floor. The tapping was rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. When I was a few feet from the stockroom door, it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Then came a new sound. A dragging. A long, slow scrape, like something heavy and rough being pulled across the outside wall. It started at the fire door, and then moved slowly, along the side of the building toward the front. I didn't hesitate. I backed out of the stockroom, locked the door behind me, and grabbed my phone to call Frank, the owner. I told him what happened, my voice shaking. He said he'd try calling the sheriff's department, but the lines might be down in the storm. He promised he'd drive out himself if he had to. 5 minutes later, the store's landline phone rang. The shrill sound made me jump out of my skin. I snatched it up, expecting it to be Frank. "Hello?" I said. There was no voice on the other end, just static-filled silence. I was about to hang up when I heard it. A quiet, chilling whisper that sounded like it was right next to my ear. "You shouldn't have lied." I slammed the receiver down so hard it cracked the plastic. My hands were trembling. I sent a text to Frank. "Did you just call the store?" My phone screen stayed blank. No sent confirmation, no signal. I was cut off. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. I scrambled behind the counter, crouching down, trying to make myself as small as possible. My fingers felt stiff, numb with fear. I watched the clock on the wall tick over. 10:46, 10:47. The front door opened. A wave of icy wind and snow blasted into the store. It wasn't locked. I knew I had locked it. I had double-checked it. The same grey man walked in, a silhouette against the swirling white outside. Snow clung to his dark coat, and his hands were still bare, still raw. He walked to the counter, his steps silent, and looked down at me hiding there. His expression was unchanged. "You're not supposed to be open," he said, his voice the same dead monotone. I'm closing now," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. He tilted his head, a bird-like, unnatural movement. "Why'd you lie about being alone?" "I didn't. I'm not." The lie came out before I could stop it. He shook his head slowly. "Someone's in the back." He leaned in over the counter, his face getting closer. His voice dropped to a low, venomous hiss. "Tell them they don't have long!" Then he straightened up, turned, and walked out the door, leaving it wide open. The second he was gone, I lunged for the wall and slammed the emergency power shut-off button. Nothing happened. I hit it again. Dead. Then the lights in the store flickered once, twice, and died. The entire building plunged into absolute blackness. The only light was the faint, eerie red glow from the emergency exit sign over the door. The hum of the coolers was gone. Total silence. I fumbled for my phone. The screen was black. The battery was dead. I scrambled to the front door, my only thought to throw the manual deadbolt and lock myself in. My hands found the cold metal lock, and as I pushed it home, I glanced out the glass window, and that's when my blood ran cold. There were no tracks in the snow, not a single one. The thick blanket of white covering the parking lot was completely smooth, unbroken, and perfect. There were no tire marks from the grey sedan. There were no footprints from the man. It was as if none of it had ever been there. Then the dragging started again. This time it was inside. Much louder. Coming from the back of the store, from the stockroom. I barricaded myself in the tiny employee restroom, shoving a metal shelf in front of the door. I sat on the floor, my back against the cold wall, listening. I heard the scraping stop right outside the stockroom. And then a new sound began, a slow, deliberate scraping right on the other side of the restroom wall. The sound of hard nails testing the metal, searching for a way in. I don't know how long I was in there. I must have passed out from sheer terror. I woke to the sound of fists pounding on the front windows of the store. Light was streaming in. It was a sheriff's deputy. Frank had finally gotten through to them, and when they couldn't reach me, he'd driven out himself and found the store dark and my car buried in a snowdrift. When they let me out of the restroom, the power was back on. Everything looked normal. The cash was still on the counter. The store was just as I'd left it. Except for one thing, the metal fire door in the back. It was covered in dozens of fresh, deep gouges, all around the hinges and the handle, as if something with incredible strength had tried to claw its way in, and outside, the deputy confirmed it. The snow around the entire building was a smooth, perfect, unbroken sheet. I quit that morning. I packed my things and left that town and never looked back. I still don't know who that man was, or what he was. I don't know what was dragging itself around the store that night, or what he was warning me about. but I can tell you this. I never ever stay anywhere alone after dark in December. Some things you don't need to understand to believe. You just need to survive them. Thanks for listening. If you like this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more. Stay safe out there!